Marcus Kane stepped out of his battered transport ship onto the rust-colored surface of Kepler 442c, his boots crunching against the crystalline sand that covered this forgotten world. The twin suns cast long shadows across the barren landscape, and in the distance, the skeletal remains of what had once been a thriving Xenotech laboratory complex stretched toward the amber sky. He pulled his combat jacket tighter against the cold wind that swept across the plains. 23 years of military service had left their mark on his weathered face, but his eyes remained sharp as a hawk's. The prosthetic arm that had replaced his left limb after the Battle of Proxima Station moved with mechanical precision as he adjusted the scope on his rifle. Old habits died hard, and Marcus never went anywhere unarmed. The auction had been a joke. 3 bidders for an entire research facility that had once been worth billions of credits. The Zephyrian Empire had abandoned it after their scientists mysteriously vanished, leaving behind only whispers and rumors. Most people assumed it was cursed or contaminated. Marcus didn't believe in curses, and contamination could be cleaned. What he believed in was opportunity. The complex sprawled before him like a metallic graveyard. Towers twisted into impossible spirals, their alien architecture defying human understanding of physics. Bridges connected floating platforms that should have crashed to the ground decades ago but somehow remained suspended in midair. The Zephyrians had been masters of gravitational manipulation, among other things that made human scientists weep with envy. Marcus activated his handheld scanner and began walking toward the main entrance. The device immediately started chittering with readings that made no sense, energy signatures that shouldn't exist, gravitational anomalies that his equipment couldn't properly measure, and stranger still, signs of recent activity despite the facility being abandoned for over a century. The massive entrance doors stood open, their surfaces covered in symbols that seemed to shift and move when he wasn't looking directly at them. Marcus had seen Zephyrian writing before during his military campaigns, but this was different. These symbols pulsed with a faint blue light, almost like a heartbeat. He stepped inside, his boots echoing in the vast reception hall. The interior was in better condition than he had expected. Emergency lighting cast an eerie glow across polished floors that showed no signs of dust or decay. Climate control systems hummed quietly in the walls, somehow still functioning after all these years. Marcus pulled out his tablet and began documenting everything. As a former military marksman turned salvage operator, he had learned to be thorough. Every piece of functional technology in this place represented potential profit. The gravitational generators alone could fund his retirement if he could figure out how to extract them safely. But as he moved deeper into the complex, profit became the last thing on his mind. The first laboratory he entered contained equipment that boggled his understanding. Crystalline matrices suspended in force fields, machines that appeared to bend space around themselves, and most disturbing of all, containment units that had clearly held living subjects. The viewing ports were dark now, but the organic residue on the walls told a story Marcus didn't like. He found the first data terminal in what appeared to be a research supervisor's office. The Zephyrian text was beyond his ability to read, but his tablet's translation software began working on it immediately. The process was slow, the alien language requiring complex contextual analysis, but gradually words began appearing on his screen. The initial entries were mundane: research schedules, supply requisitions, progress reports on various projects. But as Marcus scrolled deeper into the files, the tone began to change. References to the human problem appeared with increasing frequency. Discussions of biological limitations and evolutionary dead ends made his blood run cold. Then he found the video logs. The first recording showed a typical Zephyrian researcher, her elongated form draped in the flowing robes common to their species. She spoke in their musical language, but the translation software rendered her words into stark English text on his screen. Research log, cycle 4337. We have obtained several human specimens from the recent conflict in the Vega system. Initial examination confirms previous hypotheses regarding their primitive biology. Neural capacity is approximately 47% below Zephyrian standards. Physical capabilities are similarly limited. It is remarkable that such a species has managed to achieve interstellar travel. Marcus felt his jaw clench. He had fought against the Zephyrians in that conflict. Good soldiers had died in that system, reduced to mere specimens in this alien's casual dismissal. The next log was worse. Cycle 4341. Dissection of human subject #7 reveals fascinating adaptive mechanisms. While cognitively inferior, human neural tissue shows unusual resilience to direct manipulation. Previous attempts to enhance Zephyrian mental capacity through biological integration have failed, but human brain matter may provide the key we have been seeking. Marcus's hands shook as he scrolled to the next entry. The implications were becoming clear, and every instinct honed by years of combat was screaming danger. Cycle 4348. Breakthrough achieved. Human neural tissue, when properly integrated with our own biology, provides extraordinary cognitive enhancement. The primitive instincts that make humans such effective warriors apparently translate into improved pattern recognition and tactical analysis when combined with our advanced neural architecture. Recommendation: increase human specimen acquisition immediately. The recordings continued for months, documenting a systematic program of human capture, experimentation, and neural harvesting. The Zephyrians had been kidnapping human prisoners of war and civilians, dissecting their brains, and grafting the tissue into their own heads to create superhuman hybrids. Marcus stood up from the terminal, his prosthetic hand clenching into a fist. The Zephyrian Empire had always presented themselves as the civilized alternative to humanity's barbaric expansion across the galaxy. They spoke of peace, of scientific advancement, of the greater good, all while conducting the most horrific experiments imaginable on captured humans. But the logs didn't end there. As he continued reading, the tone shifted again. The confident scientific observations gave way to something else. Concern. Then, fear. Cycle 4389. Unexpected complications have arisen with the enhanced subjects. The integrated human neural tissue appears to be asserting itself. Subject Z47 has begun exhibiting behavioral patterns inconsistent with standard Zephyrian psychology, aggressive tendencies, tactical thinking beyond normal parameters, and most disturbing, apparent retention of human memories that should have been eliminated during the integration process. Marcus leaned forward, his pulse quickening. The human brain tissue wasn't just providing enhancement, it was fighting back. Cycle 4392. Subject Z47 has escaped containment. Security protocols failed when it demonstrated combat abilities far exceeding projections. The human neural components have somehow accessed and enhanced our own biological systems in ways we did not anticipate. All research staff are advised to maintain safe distance until the subject can be recaptured. The next several logs detailed a cascade of failures. More subjects escaping, security systems being bypassed with inhuman cunning, and research staff disappearing without explanation. The final entry, dated over a century ago, was brief and filled with terror. Cycle 4401. They are no longer Zephyrian. They are no longer human. They are something else entirely. And they are hunting us. The integration process has created beings with the intelligence of our species, combined with the relentless determination of theirs. We have made a terrible mistake. The facility is being evacuated immediately. May the cosmos forgive us for what we have unleashed. Marcus sat back in the chair, his mind racing. The entire Zephyrian research staff had vanished, not because of contamination or curse, but because they had created monsters. Human Zephyrian hybrids that had turned on their creators and driven them from this place. The question that terrified him was simple. Where were those hybrids now? A sound echoed through the complex, distant but unmistakable. Footsteps. Measured, purposeful, and coming closer. Marcus grabbed his rifle and moved toward the laboratory entrance. His military training kicked in automatically, years of combat experience overriding his shock at what he had discovered. Whatever was walking through this facility, it wasn't human, and it wasn't Zephyrian. It was something that combined the worst aspects of both species, The footsteps grew louder, accompanied now by a sound that made his skin crawl. Humming, a melody that seemed both alien and familiar, as if someone had taken a human lullaby and twisted it into something unrecognizable. Marcus pressed himself against the wall beside the doorway and raised his rifle. Through the scope, he could see movement in the corridor beyond. A figure approached with fluid grace, too tall to be human but moving with a predatory confidence no Zephyrian had ever possessed. When it stepped into view, Marcus had to fight to keep his breathing steady. The creature retained the basic Zephyrian body structure, elongated and elegant, but its movements carried the controlled aggression of a human soldier. Its eyes, when they turned toward his hiding place, held an intelligence that was definitely not entirely alien. It smiled at him, revealing teeth that had been modified into sharp points, and spoke in perfect English, with just a hint of Zephyrian musical inflection. "Hello, Marcus Kane. We have been waiting so very long for another human to visit our home." Marcus kept his rifle trained on the creature, though every instinct told him that conventional weapons would be useless against something that had outsmarted an entire facility of advanced alien scientists. The hybrid smile never wavered as it stepped fully into the laboratory, its elongated fingers trailing along the examination tables with casual familiarity. "Lower your weapon," it said, its voice carrying harmonics that seemed to resonate directly in Marcus's skull. "If we intended to kill you immediately, you would already be dead. We are curious about you. Marcus Kane, former Sergeant First Class, 47th Reconnaissance Battalion, survivor of Proxima Station." The fact that it knew his military record sent ice through his veins. Marcus kept the rifle steady, his finger resting on the trigger. "What are you?" "Crazy." The creature tilted its head, the motion disturbingly human despite its alien proportions. "We are what your species and ours become when properly combined. The Zephyrians called us abominations. We prefer to think of ourselves as evolved. You're the escaped test subjects. We are the proof that their experiments succeeded beyond their wildest nightmares." The hybrid moved closer, and Marcus could see that its skin held a faint luminescence, patterns of light flowing beneath the surface like bioluminescent veins. They sought to enhance themselves with human aggression and tactical thinking. Instead, they created beings with Zephyrian intellect and human determination. The combination proved unstable for their purposes. Marcus backed toward the window, keeping the rifle between himself and the creature. "Where are the others?" The research logs mentioned multiple subjects. "Oh, they are here." "We are all here." The hybrid's smile widened. "This facility has been our home for over a century. We have made improvements." Through the window behind Marcus, shapes moved in the courtyard below, dozens of them, maybe hundreds, all sharing the same impossible blend of alien grace and human purpose. They moved through the complex like wolves through a forest they had claimed as their territory. "The Zephyrians abandoned us," the hybrid continued, running one elongated finger along a surgical instrument. "Left us to die in their sealed laboratories. They assumed we would simply waste away without their care. They underestimated what humans do when trapped and desperate." Marcus's tactical mind was working furiously, calculating distances, analyzing cover, estimating his chances of escape. All the calculations came up negative. He was surrounded, outgunned, and facing an enemy that combined superior alien technology with human cunning. "What do you want?" "Want?" The creature laughed, a sound like crystal chimes mixed with human humor. "We want what every hybrid wants, Marcus Kane. We want to not be alone." The implications hit him like a physical blow. "You want to create more of yourselves. The Zephyrians gave us intellect beyond human capability. Your species gave us drive beyond Zephyrian comprehension. But we are incomplete. We are stable, but we cannot reproduce naturally. The genetic integration that created us was too violent for normal biological processes." Marcus kept backing toward the window, his mind racing. The creature was talking freely, which meant it either didn't consider him a threat, or it was confident he wouldn't be leaving to tell anyone what he had learned. "So, you need fresh genetic material. Human and Zephyrian. Clever." "Yes, We require both components to create stable offspring. The Zephyrians avoided this system entirely after we drove them away. But humans... The hybrid's eyes gleamed with predatory anticipation. Humans. Keep coming. Salvagers, explorers, the occasional military patrol. We have been very patient. How many? How many what? Humans who have visited? Or how many new hybrids we have successfully created? Marcus felt his blood turn to ice water. Both. 47 humans have landed on this world in the past century. 31 proved suitable for the integration process. We now number 68 active individuals. The numbers were staggering. These creatures had been systematically capturing and converting every human who had the misfortune to discover this place. Marcus was just the latest in a long line of victims. The Zephyrian genetic material was more difficult to acquire, the hybrid continued conversationally, but we eventually learned to track their deep space exploration vessels. Amazing what you can accomplish when you combine human tactical thinking with access to Zephyrian technology. You've been raiding Zephyrian ships. Raiding implies we leave survivors. We prefer complete acquisition of resources. The creature moved to block Marcus's path to the door. Do not misunderstand our methods, former sergeant. We take no pleasure in violence for its own sake. We simply do what is necessary for our species' survival. Marcus realized he was dealing with something far worse than monsters. These hybrids had retained enough human psychology to justify their actions while possessing the cold analytical nature of Zephyrians. They saw kidnapping, experimentation, and forced conversion as simple resource management. You're talking about genocide. We are talking about evolution. Your species will eventually encounter ours in significant numbers. When that happens, one of three outcomes is inevitable. Humans will destroy us, we will destroy humans, or we will find a way to coexist. We believe the third option requires humans to understand what we represent. The hybrid gestured toward the window, where more creatures had gathered in the courtyard below. We are not simply enhanced humans or modified Zephyrians. We are proof that biological barriers between species can be overcome. We represent the future of intelligent life in this galaxy. Marcus kept his rifle trained on the creature's center mass, though he was increasingly certain it wouldn't matter. And if we don't want your version of evolution, then you will be given the same choice the Zephyrians received. Adapt or become extinct. The casual delivery of the threat made it somehow more terrifying than any dramatic pronouncement could have. These beings weren't driven by hatred or anger. They were simply following what they saw as biological imperative, pursuing their own survival with human determination and Zephyrian logic. The integration process has been refined significantly since our creation. The hybrid continued. Early subjects experienced considerable discomfort during the neural modification phase. We have learned to minimize trauma while maximizing retention of useful memories and skills. You're talking about keeping me conscious while you dissect my brain. The process requires living neural tissue to be successful. But consciousness is not strictly necessary. We have developed techniques that preserve essential cognitive patterns while eliminating most pain responses. Marcus felt his grip tighten on the rifle. The creature was describing torture and murder in the same tone a scientist might use to discuss laboratory protocols. The combination of human practical thinking with Zephyrian emotional detachment had created something genuinely monstrous. However, the hybrid said, raising one elongated finger, we believe you might be particularly valuable as a conscious conversion. What does that mean? Your military experience, combined with your proven survival instincts, represents genetic and memetic material we have not yet successfully integrated. Previous human subjects were primarily civilians, traders, researchers, explorers. You are the first combat veteran to visit our facility. The creature began pacing, its movements predatory and hypnotic. We have retained human tactical knowledge from our original neural integration, but it was derived from Zephyrian scientific personnel who had limited military experience. Your memories, your training, your combat instincts, these would provide significant enhancement to our collective capabilities. Marcus was beginning to understand. They didn't just want to kill him and harvest his brain tissue. They wanted him to willingly participate in his own conversion, to provide maximum access to his military knowledge and experience. And if I refuse, then we will proceed with standard integration protocols. The results will be satisfactory, though perhaps not optimal. The hybrid's smile returned, sharp and predatory. But we believe you will choose cooperation once you understand what we offer in return. What could you possibly offer that would make me agree to this? Survival, Marcus Kane. Not just your own, but your species. The hybrid moved to one of the computer terminals and activated a holographic display. Star charts appeared in the air between them, showing the known galaxy with human and Zephyrian territories marked in different colors. But there were other markings as well. Clusters of red indicators that seemed to be spreading outward from various points. These represent confirmed hybrid populations, the creature explained. We are not the only group of our kind. The Zephyrian experiments were conducted on multiple worlds, with varying degrees of success. Most failed, resulting in the destruction of both the human subjects and their Zephyrian creators. But some, like ourselves, survived and thrived. Marcus studied the display with growing horror. There were dozens of red clusters scattered across the galaxy, each one representing a potential threat to both human and Zephyrian civilizations. We have been in contact with our siblings for the past 30 years, sharing information, coordinating activities, planning for the future. Some groups have chosen aggressive expansion, actively hunting human and Zephyrian populations for conversion material. Others have remained hidden, growing slowly and carefully. The hybrid manipulated the display, zooming in on human space. Several red markers were disturbingly close to major population centers. Group 7 has established itself in the Centauri system. They have been infiltrating human colonies for the past decade, converting selected individuals and placing them in positions of influence. Group 12 has penetrated Zephyrian space and is currently aboard 17 different research vessels. Marcus felt the weight of the revelation crushing down on him. This wasn't just about one abandoned laboratory and a handful of escaped experiments. This was about a galaxy-wide conspiracy that had been developing for over a century. Why are you telling me this? Because we believe you represent an opportunity for peaceful resolution. Your military background gives you credibility with human command structures. Your presence here demonstrates that humans are still exploring this region of space, which means contact with your species is inevitable. The hybrid deactivated the hologram and turned back to Marcus. We can offer you a choice that previous subjects did not receive. Undergo voluntary conversion and serve as our ambassador to humanity. Help us establish communication with your leaders and negotiate a peaceful transition to our shared future. Or we proceed with involuntary conversion and prepare for the war that will inevitably result when our expanding population comes into direct conflict with human space. Marcus felt the walls of the laboratory closing in around him. Every option led to the same destination: the end of humanity as he knew it. The only question was whether that end would come through voluntary transformation or violent conquest. How long do I have to decide? We are patient, but not infinitely so. Our siblings grow restless for expansion, and some groups have already begun more aggressive activities. If we cannot provide them with evidence of a peaceful solution soon, they will likely choose direct action. The hybrid moved toward the door, pausing at the threshold. We will give you one rotation of this world to consider our offer. Use the time to explore our facility, examine our records, and understand what we truly represent. We believe that once you see the full scope of our capabilities, you will recognize the futility of human resistance. And if I try to leave, you will not succeed. But you are welcome to try. We are curious to observe how a human soldier adapts to our defensive systems. The creature departed, leaving Marcus alone with the weight of an impossible decision and the growing certainty that he had stumbled into something far larger and more dangerous than a simple salvage operation. Marcus spent the first several hours after the hybrid's departure methodically exploring the facility, his military training keeping him focused despite the magnitude of what he had discovered. Every corridor told the same story. Human ingenuity had been twisted together with Zephyrian technology to create something that transcended the capabilities of either species alone. The hybrids had not simply maintained the original laboratory. They had expanded it, improved it, and turned it into something that resembled a fortress more than a research facility. Gravitational manipulators created impossible architectural features, walls that bent space around them, corridors that were longer on the inside than the outside, and defensive positions that could only be accessed by beings who understood how to navigate folded space-time. But it was the human touches that truly disturbed him. The tactical improvements were obvious to his trained eye. Choke points had been reinforced, sight lines had been optimized, and the entire complex had been redesigned to funnel intruders into carefully prepared kill zones. The hybrids had retained every lesson human military engineers had learned about defensive warfare and combined it with technology that made conventional assault impossible. In what had once been the central laboratory, Marcus found evidence of the conversion process. Operating tables equipped with both Zephyrian medical technology and human surgical techniques, containment systems that could restrain struggling subjects while maintaining the precise environmental conditions needed for neural integration. Most disturbing of all, he found personal effects from previous victims carefully cataloged and stored: a trader's identification badge, an explorer's navigation equipment, a researcher's personal journals, dozens of small items that represented lives cut short and people transformed into something their families would never recognize. Marcus lingered over a military dog tag that bore the name Sarah Chen, Lieutenant, Colonial Marines. He had known her. She had been reported missing in action during a deep space patrol 3 years ago. Now he knew what had really happened to her. The communications center provided the most valuable intelligence. The hybrids had been remarkably thorough in their record-keeping, documenting not just their own activities but their communications with other hybrid groups across the galaxy. Marcus spent hours reviewing the data, and what he found painted a picture that was even worse than the hybrid had suggested. Group 7 in the Centauri system wasn't just infiltrating human colonies. They had successfully converted key personnel in the Colonial Defense Force and were actively sabotaging humanity's military preparedness. Group 12's penetration of Zephyrian space had given them access to advanced weapons technology that they were sharing with their siblings. Most terrifying of all, Group 1. Apparently, the original hybrid population created in the first Zephyrian experiments had established a breeding program that was producing second-generation hybrids at an exponential rate. The timeline for hybrid expansion was measured in decades, not centuries. Within 50 years, there would be hybrid populations throughout known space, each group working toward the same goal of species replacement through conversion or conquest. Marcus also found detailed psychological profiles of every human who had been converted. The hybrids were not randomly selecting victims. They were targeting individuals with specific skills and knowledge that would enhance their collective capabilities: military personnel, scientists, engineers, and leaders. They were systematically acquiring the expertise needed to challenge both human and Zephyrian civilizations. But the most chilling discovery was in the facility's archives. The hybrids had maintained complete records of their original creation, including video documentation of the conversion process itself. Marcus watched in horrified fascination as human prisoners were systematically dissected and rebuilt, their neural tissue integrated with Zephyrian biology while they remained conscious and aware. The early conversions had been crude and often fatal, but the hybrids had learned from each failure, refining their techniques until they achieved a success rate of over 90%. They had turned the violation that created them into a precise science. As the planet's twin suns began to set, casting long shadows across the complex, Marcus made his way to the facility's highest observation deck. His transport ship sat where he had left it, apparently untouched but undoubtedly under constant surveillance. The hybrids could have destroyed it at any time, but they wanted him to know that escape was a choice they were allowing him to make. He activated his personal communicator and began composing a message to Colonial Command. The device would store the transmission and automatically send it if his biometric monitors detected his death, or if he failed to check in within 72 hours. It was a standard precaution for solo salvage operations, though he had never imagined he would need it under these circumstances. The message was difficult to compose. How did you explain that humanity was facing an existential threat from creatures that most people didn't even know existed? How did you convince military commanders to take seriously a warning about hybrid super soldiers when the evidence was trapped on a remote world controlled by the very beings you were warning about. Marcus kept the message factual and direct. Coordinates of the facility, summary of what he had discovered, and his assessment that immediate military intervention was required. He included data files from the hybrid computers as supporting evidence, though he doubted anyone would believe the full scope of the threat until they saw it for themselves. As he finished recording the message, footsteps echoed on the observation deck behind him. Marcus turned to find 3 hybrids approaching, led by the one he had encountered earlier. The others were new. A female whose elongated features retained hints of Asian ancestry, and a male whose Zephyrian characteristics were more pronounced, but whose movements carried the unmistakable confidence of a human soldier. "You have seen our archives," the original hybrid said. "It was not a question. I've seen enough. Then you understand the scope of what we represent. We are not an aberration or a failed experiment. We are the inevitable result of 2 species discovering that their biological barriers are not as absolute as they believed." The female hybrid stepped forward, her voice carrying a musical quality that was purely Zephyrian overlaid with perfect human diction. "We have monitored your communications, Marcus Kane. Your message to Colonial Command will not be transmitted." Marcus felt his jaw clench. "Jamming my signals? Redirecting them?" The male hybrid corrected. "Your warning will be received by Group 7 in the Centauri system. They will ensure that appropriate responses are prepared for any human military investigation." The trap was even more sophisticated than Marcus had realized. Not only were the hybrids preventing him from warning his own species, they were using his communications to coordinate their own defensive preparations. "You cannot stop what is coming," the original hybrid continued. "Human and Zephyrian space is vast, but not infinite. Expansion will eventually bring our populations into direct contact. When that happens, the species that survives will be the one best adapted for the challenges of a hostile galaxy." Marcus looked out across the alien landscape, his mind working through tactical scenarios and strategic possibilities. Everything he had learned pointed to the same conclusion. Conventional military action would fail against an enemy that combined superior technology with intimate knowledge of human psychology and tactics. But there was another option, one that the hybrids, for all their intelligence, might not have considered. "You're right about one thing," Marcus said finally. "Humanity isn't equipped to fight your kind in a conventional war. Then you accept our offer of conversion?" "No. I'm going to do something you won't expect." Marcus activated a secondary function on his communicator, one that the hybrids had apparently overlooked in their surveillance of his equipment. The device began broadcasting a broad-spectrum distress signal that would be detected by any vessel within 3 light years. More importantly, it included tactical information about hybrid capabilities and specific warnings about conversion techniques. The signal wouldn't reach Colonial Command, but it would reach other humans, traders, explorers, military patrols. Anyone who happened to be in the region would receive the warning and know to avoid this system. "Clever," the female hybrid acknowledged, "but ultimately futile. We will simply relocate to another world and continue our expansion elsewhere. Maybe. But now you'll have to do it without the resources of this facility. And without me." Marcus pulled the pins from the 3 grenades attached to his combat vest. Military-grade explosives designed to breach armored positions. In the confined space of the observation deck, they would be more than sufficient for what he had in mind. The hybrids reacted with inhuman speed, but Marcus had already committed to his course of action. He sprinted toward the edge of the observation deck, the grenades clutched in his prosthetic hand. The facility's central power core was directly below, a massive gravitational generator that maintained the complex's impossible architecture. "You cannot destroy us all," the original hybrid called after him. "Our siblings will continue even if we are eliminated." "I know," Marcus replied, diving over the railing toward the power core 50 meters below. "But they'll have to do it without knowing everything you've learned." The grenades detonated just as Marcus impacted the gravitational generator, their combined explosive force rupturing containment fields that had been maintaining stable space-time distortions for over a century. The result was catastrophic and immediate. Reality folded in on itself as gravitational forces that had been carefully controlled suddenly ran wild. The facility's impossible architecture collapsed as the physics that supported it failed. Corridors that had been longer on the inside than the outside snapped back to normal dimensions, crushing anything caught in the transition. Floating platforms crashed to the ground as artificial gravity fields flickered and died. Marcus felt the universe twist around him as space-time itself became unstable. His last coherent thought was satisfaction that the hybrids' archives, their conversion equipment, and their accumulated knowledge was being destroyed along with him. The gravitational collapse consumed the entire facility in seconds, creating a localized space-time anomaly that would persist for decades. When it finally stabilized, nothing remained but a crater filled with twisted metal and impossible geometric formations that hurt to look at directly. 3 days later, a colonial marine patrol vessel detected Marcus's distress signal and investigated the coordinates he had provided. They found the ruins of something that had clearly been an advanced facility, but the gravitational distortions made detailed investigation impossible. The patrol commander classified the site as a hazardous anomaly and recommended that it be marked off-limits to civilian traffic. The warning Marcus had died to broadcast reached 17 different ships over the following weeks. Most dismissed it as the ravings of a salvager who had spent too much time alone in deep space, but a few took it seriously enough to report the information to colonial intelligence. Agent Sarah Morrison was one of the analysts who reviewed those reports. She had been tracking unusual disappearances in fringe space for months, following a pattern that suggested organized activity rather than random accidents. Marcus Kane's warning provided the first concrete evidence of what was really happening to missing exploration crews. Morrison's investigation would eventually lead to the discovery of Group 7's infiltration of the Centauri system, and the first direct contact between human forces and hybrid populations. The war that followed was brutal and costly, but humanity was prepared in ways they never could have been without Marcus Kane's sacrifice. The former marksman never lived to see the outcome of his final mission, but his last shot found its target. In destroying the facility on Kepler 442c, he had eliminated one of the hybrid's most important research centers and prevented them from accessing over a century of accumulated knowledge about human military tactics and psychology. It was not enough to stop the hybrid expansion, but it was enough to give humanity a fighting chance. And sometimes, in the vast darkness of space, a fighting chance is all any species can ask for. Years later, when historians studied the early phases of the hybrid war, they would mark Marcus Kane's sacrifice as the moment when humanity's response shifted from reaction to action. The former marksman had faced an enemy that combined the best attributes of two advanced species and found a way to hurt them. It was, in the end, the most human response possible to an impossible situation. When faced with superior technology and overwhelming odds, Marcus Kane had chosen to fight back in the only way available to him. He had made the enemy pay a price for victory and ensured that others would have the information they needed to continue the fight. The hybrids had been correct about one thing. The barriers between species were not as absolute as anyone had believed, but they had underestimated what humans would do when those barriers were breached by force. Marcus Kane's final action proved that even when transformation or extinction seemed like the only options, there was always a third choice: resistance.